welcome. Patriot Radio News Hour. I'm Joe Jaquint, CEO of the Patriot Trading Group, and our toll-free number, 800-951-0592. March Madness continuing to roll here. Gold and silver rallying. And again, you got to buy these dips. You got to buy these pullbacks because most of it is based on make-believe, fantasy, idiotic thinking where you got to understand a lot of Wall Street is really a casino. And it's in the hands of a handful of really big companies that just, hey, I want gold prices to move today, or oil prices to move today, or wheat, or cotton, or a stock. And if I can use a headline to make it move, that's what I'm going to do. And this is what we saw this week. Right? We had a rally on Wall Street. Really, Wall Street's really rallying, really. Right? The central bank has already gone on record saying, hey, listen, we're going to put us into a recession because inflation's out of control, but we're going to rally. But again, peace talks and all. And of course, we know, we've heard, how many times have you heard the word peace talk? And it comes out every 3 or 4 days, and it's always nonsense. And then you look at oil prices today. Oil prices today back to almost $110 a barrel. Why? Well, what happened? Oh, we got actual data. And this is why you're buying gold. This is why you're buying silver. Because you know what the actual data is and what the actual data is actually going to be. And if you're too dumb to figure that out, well, then you deserve what you get. It's really just that simple. It really is. If you want to, believe in ifs and buts and candies and nuts and unicorns and all that, great. Great. But when you get wiped out, when all that money sitting in your bank account suddenly gets tied up, and you get issued some stock that maybe in the future you can get your money back, maybe. That's on you. The bail-ins are coming. The digital money is coming. And I know you know it. I know you know it because you've been listening to me for 20 years telling you what's going to happen. You know, when Jay Powell and all his cronies, and it's amazing to me. How do all these people, all these Fed governors still have jobs? How long did we, and it's not just Jay Powell, Janet Yellen. How does she still have a job? Inflation's going to be transitory. Please. Well, you got to remember, first they said there wasn't going to be any. And then for a whole year, it's going to be transitory. Well, look at where we're at. Look at what's coming. We got a great show lined up for you. The shortages are real. And they're not going to go away anytime soon. And what you think you're paying a lot now, give it another 90 days. I'm joined with my partner in crime, the man that runs the Front Range, Jason Walker. Jason, good morning. Welcome. It is a hump day Wednesday, and once again, March has not disappointed.
Yes, sometimes life feels like a flat tire, huh, Joe? I found out that a set of tires for a Toyota Corolla is $750 installed. How's that, Joe?
Wow. I mean, think about this, right? This is I would venture to say the most common tire on a car in the United States today, i.e., probably the cheapest set of tires that you can get, because it's standard. Hey, we make more, What was it? My cousin Vinny.
Yeah.
The defendant's car, well, it's the most common tire, a Michelin R15, blah, blah, blah. $800.
Right, Joe. We could have got a lower grade tire, maybe down to $650, and then the higher grade tire would have been up to $1,000. So we went middle range.
Yeah, just give me the middle of the road. Give me, it's not the best tire out there. It's not the worst tire out there. But hey, I want, a decent tire.
I used to buy a used Corolla for $1,000.
Oh man, remember those days? 800-951-0592. And again, it's hard to put into words. You have no idea what's coming. Oil inventory reports. Once again, we released 3 million barrels of crude oil out of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. It didn't matter. Drawdowns, down 3-4 million barrels. Cushing, Oklahoma, drawing down again. Distillate stocks, there's just not enough to go around. How about today? Austin International, Austin, Texas, says they may run out of jet fuel at the airport. Jason, get ready.
Well, I guess the prices of airfares will go up at that point, I guess, Joe, because first come, first serve if you have the money, I guess. Well, that's why things get so expensive. There are so many facets to inflation, especially when you add the supply lines start to get messed up. And, man, what I love about the show that we do, Joe, is that it's not the war in Ukraine. It's not coronavirus. If everything was smooth sailing the last 2.5 years, we'd still have all of this going on. It's just a smokescreen, Joe.
Yeah, and you know what? So glad you said that, because we were telling you way before there was anything about Russia or any of that other stuff, what was coming, and again, we're seeing it all play out, and all of the other stuff is just noise and distractions to fool you to what's really coming. Patriot Radio News Hour. We'll be back after the break. 800-951-0592, Patriot Radio News Hour. Joe and Jason joining you. As I said earlier, the shortages are starting to spread. You're going to see it everywhere. Yesterday, the White House had a day. They have it every day. They call it a daily press briefing. And they were talking about food. And specifically, they were asking the president of the Council of Economic Advisors. Yes, her name is Cecilia Rose. And they were talking about what's happening with food prices. And, of course, we've told you about fertilizer. We told you about stuff like Roundup and fixing tractors, diesel, the cost of diesel. By the way, wait till you see what diesel does this summer. And I don't mean that in a good way. And, of course, obviously, the commodities themselves, wheat and soybean and corn and all the grains that we need. And she said that, here was what she said. First, we are a net exporter of many food commodities. So that's the first. So kind of suggesting, dare I say, could you imagine if we had to export less? Farmers respond to price signals, she said. And so with the price of food rising, they will be responding by making additional plannings and taking advantage of these increased prices. See, it's fine. The farmers apparently, Jason, they just have all this money in the world to buy all this fertilizer, and apparently they've got all this other ground, and they're just going to plant a lot more stuff. See, problem solved.
Yeah, the farmers got squeezed decades ago, and so something like this happening makes it really bad for the guys that are hanging on. And it doesn't help the guys like Bill Gates and things coming in, buying all the farmland they can buy up so they can just add it to the biggest and hugest of farm conglomerates, Joe, and then those are the only companies that are going to be able to farm, and that's why the quality of our food has dropped so massively.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. I know every small independent farmer in America, if you heard the idiocracy, this is the whole problem with the Biden administration. I mean, from Joe Biden to Kamala Harris to their economic advisory team, these people are absolutely clueless. They have no idea how the real world works. And again, sitting there saying, oh, don't worry, yeah, they're just gonna play. They're not playing anymore. Have you seen what fertilizer costs, if they can even get it? Have you seen what the cost of diesel fuel is? And now apparently even that, getting diesel fuel is going to become a problem. It's, again, their complete ineptness, and I just go back to the 70s again. Arthur Burns, who nobody's ever heard of. Why? Because he was such a terribly weak Federal Reserve president. Jay Powell and him are again, two peas in a pod. How do these people have jobs? How does Jay Powell get renominated? He got renominated by the Biden administration, a guy that said, oh, don't worry, there's not going to be inflation. And, of course, here we are. And not forget about inflation. This is stagflation. This is inflation. Believe me, when this is all said and done, this will be worse than the 70s with their fake numbers. So you can imagine how bad it's going to be for all of us in real terms. And they just don't get it. And then, of course, throw Jimmy Carter and even Gerald Ford. Right? The weakness of the federal government and all of this really, Jason, is leading up to it's an economic disaster that I don't think most people see coming.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think really, and we'll do more and more of this, I just watched what's happening in California. It almost seems like whatever's happening in California, that's what's coming our way. So I saw a video yesterday, Joe, just a regular guy say, hey, what's going on here? And he shows a Costco gas station with 50 cars in line. Now, I don't see gas lines here in Colorado, but why do I have a feeling that's coming here? He also said he's driving around with all these empty stores. He went to one of the last really, I guess, still running malls in the California area, the Southern California area, and all this, all empty everywhere. But he noticed, hey, there's a whole lot of warehouses being built at record breakneck speed. He's like, man, does somebody want to store a whole lot of stuff in a bunch of warehouses, Joe? Does that trigger the whole corporate conglomerates to have the good treatment? They're going to fill up and make new warehouses as fast as they can, but the locals and the small businesses are going to get trampled, Joe.
Yeah, it's really an impossibility for businesses, especially small ones, to be able to absorb all of these costs. Avocado prices, which already were rising now, they're saying that record high food inflation is going to continue. A box of avocados, yes, from Mexico now is up 40% to $38. It's actually $2 away from record all-time highs. By the way, 80% of all of our avocados come from Mexico, and they're saying, once again, ready? Factors. Why? Well, let's see. First on the list, cost of fertilizer. Second on the list, the cost of diesel. Third on the list, the cost of transportation to get the avocados from Mexico to the United States. And they're saying that essentially at the end of the day, they just can't pass the cost along fast enough. Today, the box of avocados is going to be $38. By the time it gets to the store, we buy the box of avocados, the store reorders. Mexico's going to say, well, now it's $50, right? They reorder. Now it's $75. Now it's $100. And this is going to happen over and over and over and over again.
Maybe it'd be cheaper if the avocados could migrate illegally. Maybe that could bring it down some.
Well, you know what? Boy, don't say that. It actually, it would be.
There's probably some avocados. Yeah, there's some avocados coming over illegal.
I hate to see how much government crap is in a box of avocados. Right? Come on. All the taxes and everything else that you got to go through. How about this, though? The Biden administration is releasing a budget for next year.
I was just starting to look at that. I was just starting to look at $5.8 trillion. Is that right?
Yeah, just a few. Don't worry. It's just trillions. But here's the funny part. You got to remember, as far as the government's concerned, 2021, or 2021, listen to me. Fiscal year 2022 is halfway over. So they're getting ready for fiscal year 2023, which starts October the 1st. Guess what's in it? You'd think, okay, so, man, we've got all kinds of energy problems. We got airports now saying, hey, man, we may run out. We may run out. Why? Because you know what? We don't want to have to order. God, it's already so expensive. Maybe it's it's not getting cheaper. You would think there'd be all kinds of stuff of drilling and oil and natural gas. Nope. In the $5.8 trillion budget, a significant portion of spending will be in the name of climate change and environmental justice. Yes, it continues. And again, this is exactly what we're talking about. This is a deliberate act. This is a deliberate act. And remember, I forget who it was, if it was BlackRock or Blackstone or one of these guys came out and said, hey, listen, the fact that gasoline's going to $7 or $8 a gallon, diesel fuel could be $10 a gallon. That way, when we go to wind and solar and all this other stuff, it'll be a washout, because now at those levels, switching over to wind and solar can be financially viable, because that's what you're going to pay when we do that, right, Jason?
Yeah, it sure seems like you're going to have one hemisphere using wind and solar and clean energy, so-called, and then you have another hemisphere that's going all out in gas. I mean, that's really kind of they're breaking the world up into the gas users and the non-gas users, I guess, Joe.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. 1.45 billion, which they're describing as a environmental justice efforts, and all kinds of pork in this thing. Nothing about, you got to spend $2.6 billion to advance gender equality across a broad range of sectors, right? Okay, this thing never ends. It never ends, and this is the problem with our government. This is how big it's gotten. We're to blame. We keep electing these idiots. We keep electing these people. We keep wanting to believe all of their fake promises, and nobody gets held accountable, Jason.
No, I mean, there were good people to vote for. I talk about it, man. It seems like blue side, red side. There doesn't seem to be a side for the citizens. And Joe, we'll talk about it. You got some good guys that want to come in here and economically fix things, not just flap their gums a little bit. We'll talk about them, but Joe, you don't talk a lot of politics and politicians. I think because there's nobody to talk about. That they all vote for this stuff.
Yeah, think about this now. Airports are sending out warning messages to the airline industry saying, hey, our airports are low on jet fuel. So when you come in here, wherever you came from, put more fuel on your plane, because we can't fill up your planes here. You got to either come in, and if not, hey, if you don't want to do that, then you need to send us more supplies. Otherwise, your planes aren't going to take off. I mean, this is happening in real time. This is something that, again, we're not used to this stuff. We're not used to. What do you mean? Could you imagine you're sitting on the tarmac, folks? This is the captain speaking. We don't have any fuel, and the gas station here at the airport is out. And we're just waiting for the next truck of diesel fuel to show up. It should be here next Tuesday. So just make yourself comfortable, and the flight attendants will be handing out soft drinks and peanuts while we wait.
And Joe, there might be a fuel surcharge on your next flight that gets added on top of your ticket, which means we're flying to an airport that has less fuel that won't be able to load us up, so we got to fly with more fuel to get there. So that means, it's going to be less fuel efficient. One of the reasons they don't fill the tanks on these planes all the time is because you burn more fuel because you have a heavy load.
It's heavier, right? Burns more fuel. It costs more. Hey, here's the good news. Ready? They gave some good news. I want to give good news today. The good news is so far, no flights have been canceled and no flights have been diverted as of yet. So there you go. There's your silver lining. It's going to happen, just hasn't happened yet. And don't worry, farmers. You just plant more food.
Man.
Just plant more food. Don't worry. You're going to go ahead. Forget about how much it's going to cost. Forget about the fact that you're probably going to lose money. You just plant more food because, our Economic Advisory Council said that's what you're going to do.
It kind of seems like an eternity away, but Thanksgiving and Christmas this year, if the inflation continues, which it should, the way it looks, how much is it going to cost to fly home for Christmas, Joe?
Well, let me tell you right now, I'm going to make this real easy on you. You're not flying home for Christmas. That's what's going to happen. I mean, the rich people will fly home. But flying and driving is going to be incredibly more expensive. And part of the reason, just as an example, we are actually producing more oil right now than we were 6 months ago. But there's a small problem with that. I'll tell you what it is when we get back. Patriot Radio News Hour. Don't touch that dial. 800-951-0592. Gold's up $25 here, 1936. Silver's up almost 50 cents today, $25.15. Yesterday we had $20 gold. We had a volume special. Here I want to do today. We've got about 65 20s. Yesterday we were running them. They were $22.55. I'm going to keep that price. Obviously, right now $20 gold's at $22.75. And I'll just tell you, that was the price from the wholesalers about $10 in gold ago, so probably going to be higher than that. Gold keeps running here, but right now, got 65 20s, 22.55. So this is giving you a free day here, but that's all I can do. 10th ounce gold eagles. This is the very last day. $250 on the 1/10th ounce American gold eagle. If you buy a roll of 10th ounce, $245, but today is the final day on 1/10th ounce American gold eagles at 800-951-0592. On the silver front, a lot of you that have been waiting, especially on silver eagles, all of those should be going out by the end of this week. We have silver eagles landing in Phoenix and in Colorado over the next couple of days. But here's the thing. Today, again, new all-time record high premiums on silver eagles, on utility, junk silver, new record high premiums. And again, the reason is simple, because nobody has any. You think Saudi Arabia yesterday when they announced, oh, by the way, starting May 1st, add another $5 a barrel. They were already saying, hey, whatever you say the spot price is, Wall Street, you guys think you're so smart. We're already selling ours for $5 more than that. Starting May 1st, we're going to make it $10 more. Why do I get the feeling by the time we get to May 1st, Jason, it could be $15 or $20?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I'm not surprised by any of the crazy moves that happen when they do happen, Joe. It's almost expected. The only thing we sit around and wonder is when. When do we see these crazy things? And, man, I was able to, on the commercial break, play a couple of minutes of commentary on that budget. That budget that Biden's proposing, that is nasty. That thing's going to be horrible. Some of the highest tax hikes ever, levied mostly against big corporations. And I don't see any big corporations getting all upset about it, Joe. I think they understand how it works.
Yeah, there's a big storm coming, because you got to understand. The Federal Reserve essentially was the bond market. I mean, think about what they've done. They went from, when they started buying bonds again, and this was in late 2019, they went from under $4 trillion to $9 trillion. So you think about, hey, that's over $5 trillion over not even, a year and a half? give or take. Now that's gone. Now they're buying none. And now they're threatening. When I say threaten, because I think they're going to make good on this at the next meeting, they're going to raise 50 basis points and then say we're going to start selling bonds. At a time when already the SEC we got a liquidity problem. Matter of fact, let's change the rules. All of you banks and stuff that weren't considered dealers to the Treasury markets, you now need to be dealers. Because remember how the Treasury market rolls. Hey, there's not enough buyers, they get stuck onto the dealers. And here's what's going to happen. All of a sudden now we got an economy slowing, rates rising, the bond market tightening. We're going to have yields spiking. At the same time, the Biden administration is talking about the billionaire tax, the corporation tax, this tax, that tax, and all of those things because the budget is absolutely out of control. You're sitting there thinking about, hey, we've got a budget that's almost $6 trillion. I mean, the economy, what's the economy right now? 20 to 22 trillion, something like that. And we're talking about a federal government that has a budget. Of course, now they say 6 trillion. Well, I think whatever. I think it's 5.8 is the official number. But you know, oh, well, wait a minute. Oh, you know what? We got to give money to the Ukrainians, or we got to do this, or we got to give money over here, or the disaster over here. By the time we're done, what are we going to spend? 6.5, 7 trillion, especially if interest rates start spiking and all the interest on the debt. All of a sudden, we've got a government that's almost a third of the country's economy, Jason. It's not sustainable.
Yeah, I'm sure there's always a hidden line or two in there for different possibilities. Hey, pass this budget, and then like the line that's like 5,000 pages down. It says, oh, by the way, if we need to borrow a little extra from the Fed and amongst 2023, we reserve the right?
There was a big article out today about QE5. And apparently, I don't know what QE number we're on, but somebody says it's QE5. Is coming a lot sooner than people think. And remember, Jason, we've been telling you this. Here's how this ends. Demand destruction. Period.
With that FOIA request, Joe, I don't think quantitative easing never ended. $1 trillion a week.
I don't think it has either.
Yeah.
Even now, I don't think it's
80% of all the money in circulation was printed in the last 2 years, Joe. Come on.
Say that number again, because I don't think people get it. Say it again.
80% of all money in circulation was printed in the last 2 years. It's a fact. It's abysmal, Joe. It destroys countries when you do this.
This is what happens. Why is it that inflation is doing what it's doing? It's not Russia and Ukraine. That doesn't help. It doesn't help. But I'll tell you right now, even without Russia and Ukraine, let's just say it never happened, because it shouldn't have happened. All right, instead of crude oil being, what is it right now, $108, it'd probably be $95 on its way to 120, 130. Now, again, it didn't help, but it was already going there. Fertilizer prices were already at record highs. It ends with demand destruction. Eventually, you get to the point where people can no longer afford it. I can't tell you how many people have had to leave where they live because their rents went up 20, 30, 40% and had to find somewhere else to live. And again, not a better place to live. No, that means, hey, I've got to find a lesser place to live. My standard of living has to go down to live.
Joe, there's a reason that 3 years ago there was a time where we were still selling $20 Liberties for $12.50. Now we're at $22.50. 80% of the money was printed in the last 2 years. It just correlates, Joe.
800-951-0592, Patriot Radio News Hour. We'll be back right after the break. 800-951-0592. This is the final day here on the 1/10 ounce American Gold Eagles. 1 through 49 are $250. If you buy a roll of them, That's 50 in a roll. You can buy more than a roll, but if you buy a roll of them, I'll take $5 off. A roll of 50, 1/10 ounce gold Eagles, 12,250. We've got about 50 20s left at yesterday's price of $2,255. Gold is up now almost $30 here, approaching $19.40. Silver's up about 43 cents right now, $25.17. The Dow is down, not huge. The Dow is down today. The bond market, we've been watching this. The 10-year note down to 2.35. And again, how is it down? And the answer really is simple. Because when we look at what's happening, the yield curve getting ready to invert now, full inversion. We've been waiting for this. The 2-year note is at 2.33. The 10-year note at 2.35. So, Jason, it could happen as early as today. And, of course, that's the bond market's way of saying, hey, guess what, guys? This isn't going to end well. Jeffrey Gundlach's the guy, one of the people I tell you, if you see any of his stuff, pay attention to what he has to say. And he was out big this morning saying, hey, I know the guys that run the cheerleading squads on your television set for the stock market don't want to believe it. But you better believe what the bond market is saying right now is we got big trouble ahead, and Gundlach kind of doubling down on what he's been saying now for the last 18 months. This is how it ends, with a dollar losing 30, 40, worst case scenario, 50% of its value. As again, Jason, we're getting ready, right? This is it. This is the swan song. You know, it's not over till the fat lady sings, so to speak. Well, let me tell you right now, the fat lady's warming up. She's up next. And I think this is going to be it for the dollar. This is going to be it for the Federal Reserve note. The digital currency is coming. Matter of fact, there's legislation now in Congress. They want the Treasury Department to move even faster. Remember, Joe Biden signed an executive order. What was it, 10 days ago? Telling the Treasury to start preparing. Jason, you can't say that people weren't warned. The government is they're doing this right out in the open, Jason.
Yeah, the information's there. Unfortunately, people have been trained through their lives to ignore information. That who wants to think? I need to be entertained. I need to look at Will Smith and Kid Rock and the Oscars, and I just need to go about my busy life, barely paying my bills. And why should I think about anything? That's left for somebody else to do. And a lot of people actually believe they're dumb, Joe. I'm too stupid to understand this stuff. Well, Joe and I figured it out. I'm sure you guys can figure it out. I don't think Joe and I are any more impressive or any less impressive than anybody else out there, Joe.
No, and again, it's what you do with the information. If you want, and I said it. Remember when I said it on Monday? Don't buy this sell-off. Because remember, gold was selling off, oil was selling off, and I told you it's all fake. It's a fake headline, and they're just trying to make a few bucks. A bank or a hedge fund, they're just making a few dollars. And of course, once actual data came in, what happened? Right, gold's up 30. Right, crude oil. Remember, crude oil yesterday at one point was $98. It's now $108. Why? Because actual data comes in. Every time we get the actual data, this is what you see. And now, just today, here, and this is worrisome. Procter & Gamble, General Mills, getting downgraded by the big banks, as they're saying that they're starting to see consumers having to buy these store brand products as inflation is starting to have its effect. at the grocery store, and these are the signs that you start seeing when the consumer starts to feel the stress. And when that happens, then all of a sudden, right, the next thing that happens, the bars and restaurants business isn't as good. All of a sudden, people can't afford to eat out. Hey, I've got to raise prices again, but now the consumer can't afford to buy it. And again, remember, this is at a time now, we haven't even gotten big rate hikes yet, right? We're waiting. We've gotten a whole whopping quarter of a point. This thing is going to get really nasty before this whole event is over with. And on both sides, we're going to have soaring prices. We're going to have demand destruction. We're going into a Great Depression. It's going to happen. And here's the difference. It's going to be a depression with inflation, something that we've never seen before, Jason.
I think you're right. And I'm actually looking, since I mentioned 2019, I was looking at the gold chart for 2019. Early in the year, it charged up to $13.40 an ounce. And then it just kind of came down. It sure, didn't charge up as much as it did early this year. Man, it really charged up in late February and March, but it just kind of sagged down to about $12.70 and sat there, and people weren't buying it, Joe. We were trying to sell it, people weren't buying it, and then suddenly September showed up, and gold charged right up to $1,560. And that's how quick.
And what happened in September? Let me tell you what happened in September. That was the end of quantitative tightening.
Yep, and the repo markets, Joe, right?
Right, the repo markets fell apart. Interest rates went back to zero.
Just happens fast.
Guess what? It's going to happen just that fast again. Patriot Radio News Hour. We got a couple of lines open. Final segment coming up. Get your orders in. $20 gold pieces. What's left? $22.55. Last day on 10th ounce. 250 by 50 or more. $245. Final segment coming up. 800-951-0592. Got three lines open. You don't get it. You're not real. I'm failing you here. Maybe this will help you. This is how bad it is. You have no idea. And again, remember, because this is what Wall Street does. They want to live on fantasy. But when the real data comes in, and why, it's gradual, and then suddenly we're in just that quick, Wall Street won't open. U.S. government bonds. This is a huge, huge, huge problem. This is the biggest bubble the Fed has ever created, even bigger than Wall Street. According to Deutsche Bank's Jim Reed, he heads thematic research, which goes and has data stretching all the way back to the U.S. Civil War. They said that tomorrow will mark the end of what is set to be the worst quarter for the 10-year U.S. Treasuries since the early 1980s, right? Paul Volcker. The only other period with even worse quarterly returns for 10-year Treasuries or their equivalent was the fourth quarter of 1931, right, which was the start, really, the Great Depression. They closed the banks at 33. Believe me, the Depression was already on, and 1931 was the big warning sign. And this is according to data going all the way back to 1865. So the 10-year Treasury just had the worst quarter ever, with the exception of the 1980 Paul Volcker Fed and the start of the Great Depression in the fourth quarter of 1931.
And Paul Volcker had to raise those rates big time, Joe. When? We just did a quarter point.
Right. And this is what I'm telling you. This is how bad it really is. You have no idea. Please get ready. There is no way this ends well. The bond curve is getting ready to be fully inverted. It may happen as early as today. This is always the leading indicator. And when you hear articles like this, where they say this is the worst quarter, and then they just cite some of the worst times in our nation's history. That tells you how bad the problem is going to be. Here's my fear. My fear is the second quarter is going to be even worse. And what they mean by bad is when the 10-year note yields rise, that's bad. And they're talking about how much it rose in the first quarter. What do you think it's going to do in the second quarter as the Fed says that we're going to be raising 50 basis points every meeting? This is shaping up to be, like, again, I hate and I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but this is how I see it. I have to be honest with you. It's the next Great Depression that's coming. This is what's going to happen. Demand destruction has to happen, and that means all the house of cards has to collapse, and that's why we're going to end up with that digital currency, Jason, because that's going to be the savior.
Yeah, I mean, to recover for what's getting ready to happen, more control over those assets, more control over those fiat currencies worldwide. Those central banks are going to tighten their grip harder, Joe, because that's the only way they can keep what they got, right?
Yeah, leave that money in the bank. What could possibly go wrong? You know, even if it's losing 10 or 20% of purchasing power a year, just keep it sitting in there and see what happens. 800-951-0592.